Now the news in detail. Pakistan's Foreign Office has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to protest ceasefire violations by Indian forces along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office said Indian forces are continuously targeting civilians from across the line of control. It said India has so far committed over 1,100 ceasefire violations since January this year. The Foreign Office went on to say that the Indian side was told to respect the 2003 ceasefire agreement between the two countries. Earlier, the Pakistani army said 3 civilians were wounded in unprovoked Indian firing at the Nikyal sector along the LOC. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has rejected India's recently introduced domicile law in occupied Kashmir. In a statement, the body said India is mischievously using the COVID-19 pandemic to alter the demography of Muslim majority in the valley. The bloc's Human Rights Commission says the people of Kashmir have squarely denounced the law as yet another illegal move. The commission said such steps by New Delhi are designed to systematically pave the way for settlement colonialism. It said India is institutionalizing a system of domination over indigenous Muslims by converting them into a minority within their homeland. The body called it a violation of human rights of Kashmiris under treaties including Articles 27 and 49 of the 4th Geneva Convention. Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Aisha Farooqi has said Islamabad welcomes the OIC statement. The occupied valley has been reeling under New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout for the past 290 days. Massive protests and rallies have broken out in occupied Kashmir after the martyrdom of a freedom fighter, Junaid Sahrai. Yesterday, Indian forces martyred Sahrai and his associate during a cordon and search operation in the valley's capital, Srinagar. Defying the curfew, people came out of their houses and chanted anti-India and pro-freedom slogans. Indian troops fired pellets and tear gas to disperse the demonstrators, wounding dozens of civilians. Meanwhile, hundreds of people participated in the funeral prayers in absentia for the freedom fighter in Srinagar. The funeral outside the house of the martyred was led by his father and pro-freedom leader, Ashraf Sahrai. Occupation forces have martyred 7 Kashmiris in the ongoing month of May. The Afghan Taliban say they are committed to the peace deal with the U.S. and have urged other sides to respect the pact. In a statement, Taliban leader Haybatullah Akhundzada urged Washington not to waste the opportunity to end America's longest war. Akhundzada said the United States must not let anyone derail the peace process. The Taliban and U.S. signed a landmark deal in February this year, which stipulates Washington will withdraw all troops from Afghanistan by next year. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has arrived in Kabul to push the Taliban and government for intra-Afghan talks. His visit comes 2 days after Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and his rival Abdullah agreed on a power-sharing deal to end the political stalemate. Despite these developments, violence continues unabated in the war-torn country. In the latest incident, 8 people were killed when gunmen opened fire on worshippers in a mosque in the central Parwan province. Pakistan has recorded the highest number of single-day COVID-19 deaths as 46 people lost their lives, taking the total to 985. The Health Ministry reports 1,932 new cases over the last 24 hours, bringing the total to nearly 46,000. The ministry said over 13,000 patients have recovered so far, while 344 remain critical. It said that more than 414,000 tests have been conducted countrywide, with nearly 14,000 since yesterday. Meanwhile, the Asian Development Bank has approved a $300 million loan to strengthen Pakistan's COVID-19 fight. The project will support the purchase of medical supplies and personal protective equipment for health workers. In the U.S., over 1,500 more people have died from COVID-19 as that country's death toll nears 92,000. Worldwide, the death count has crossed 323,000 with nearly 4.9 million infections. More on that now in this report.
While COVID-19 curve appears to be flattening in many parts of the world, the virus continues to surge across Latin America. Brazil's daily death toll jumped to a record 1,179, increasing its tally to nearly 18,000. U.S. President Donald Trump says he is considering imposing a complete travel ban from Brazil.
I don't want people coming in here and affecting our people. I don't want people over there sick either. We're helping Brazil with ventilators. We're sending them ventilators, okay? They need ventilators. I'm sending them ventilators. We have so many thousands of them. We're sending them. We're sending a lot of people. No, Brazil is having some trouble. No question about it.
The Pan-American Health Organization also warned of mass virus spread at tri-border area of Amazon.
Protecting vulnerable groups is critical to addressing the health, social, and economic emergencies and winning the fight against COVID-19. It's necessary because we can't stop the spread of the virus if we don't focus on all those affected by it, including vulnerable population.
In North America, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico have extended their agreements to keep their shared borders closed to non-essential travel till June 21st.
Former U.S. Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has strongly opposed Israel's plans to annex parts of the West Bank and Jordan Valley. During a virtual fundraiser, Biden said Tel Aviv's plans will damage any hopes of peace in the decades-old conflict. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee said U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East plan has undercut the peace process. Meanwhile, Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas has voided all pacts with Israel and the U.S. after Tel Aviv announced it would go ahead with the annexation. Palestinian state media said Abbas made the announcement during an emergency meeting held in Ramallah to discuss Israeli plans. The United Arab Emirates Etihad Airways has taken the first known flight to Israel to deliver COVID-19 aid to Palestinians. In a statement, an Etihad spokeswoman said there were no passengers on board. Israel does not have diplomatic relations with any of the 6 Gulf Arab countries, and there are no commercial flights between them. In the past, private and diplomatic planes often had to travel to a third country before heading on to Israel. The United Kingdom and the U.S. have denounced Russia's role in Libya, accusing it of sending mercenaries into the conflict. Both countries issued statements after a recent UN report confirmed the presence of Russian and Syrian fighters in the country. The UK's deputy envoy to the UN, Jonathan Allen, said London remains concerned as external parties continue to provide arms and mercenaries. U.S. envoy to the UN, Kelly Craft, said all actors involved in the conflict in Libya must immediately suspend military operations. Allen and Kraft's Russian counterpart, Vasily Nebenzia, has dismissed the claims as speculation. He said, for the most part, the report is based on unverified or clearly fabricated data and is aimed at discrediting Russia's policy in Libya. Polling is underway in Burundi's first competitive presidential election since the 1993 civil war. The Election Commission has called for a peaceful vote despite simmering political violence and the coronavirus outbreak. In a statement, the Commission asked voters to leave immediately after casting ballots, as no gatherings are allowed near polling stations. President Pierre Nkurunziza will step down after 15 years in power. His ruling party candidate, retired Army General Evariste Ndayishimiye, is running against opposition leader Agathon Rwasa and 5 others. The election is meant to usher in the first democratic transition in 58 years of independence for the impoverished East African nation. The government has refused any observers from the UN or African Union for monitoring the elections, accusing them of being biased. Moscow has called the redeployment of U.S. nuclear arms from Germany to Poland a direct violation of a Russia-NATO pact. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the 1997 agreement between Russia and NATO was drafted to overcome lack of trust and reduce the threat of war. He said the agreement prohibits the deployment of nuclear weapons on territory of new members of the North Atlantic Alliance. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry said Moscow hopes Washington and Warsaw are aware of the dangerous nature of such moves. On the 15th of May, U.S. Ambassador to Poland, Georgette Mosbacher, said there is a possibility of U.S. nuclear weapons relocation from Germany to Poland. A Russian military helicopter has crashed outside Moscow during a training flight, killing the crew on board. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said the helicopter crashed in a secluded area some 20 kilometers from the town. The ministry said the airliner was not carrying any ammunition and probably a technical malfunction had caused the crash. It said a commission has been dispatched to the scene to further investigate the crash. The ministry did not specify the number of deaths during the Mi-8's crash landing. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan will address an emergency meeting of the World Economic Forum today via video link. The meeting, which will be attended by leaders from around the world, will discuss the coronavirus pandemic and its global effects. The Prime Minister will apprise the forum about steps taken by Pakistan to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus. Earlier, the World Economic Forum President, Birger Brende, invited Prime Minister Imran Khan to attend the forum. He said there are close to 1,000 companies on the WEF COVID Action Platform and over 50 projects coming out of the public-private cooperation. Millions of migrant workers in India continue walking back to their homes as they express complete hopelessness over the government and its policies. The workers say they are stuck at state borders, dying in road accidents. They said the process to register for tickets is complicated, fares are unaffordable, and only a few trains are operational. The laborers said the government wants them to register online. When internet cafes are shut, they are out of phone data, and no recharge shops are open. The U.S. Navy says it will take lawful defensive measures against vessels that come within 100 meters of its warships in the Middle East. The Navy issued the notice to mariners after a recent close encounter with Iranian vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. The notice read that armed vessels approaching U.S. naval ships may be interpreted as a threat. The Navy spokesperson said its ships are conducting routine operations in international waters and do not seek conflict. She said the U.S. Navy commanding officers retain the right to self-defense if deemed necessary. Defensive measures have already included turning a ship away from the approaching vessel, shooting off flares, and firing warning shots. The mention of a specific distance is new for the American Navy. The U.S. and China have once again clashed over the COVID-19 pandemic. This time, the ongoing tensions spilled over at the UN Security Council meeting held to discuss humanitarian aid operations in Syria. U.S. envoy Kelly Craft called on Beijing to support the UN to combat the outbreak by delivering life-saving aid to Syria. In response, the Chinese diplomat Zhang Jun urged failures. Last month, Washington suspended funding to the WHO, accusing the UN agency of covering Chinese disinformation about the outbreak. The standoff has also caused a delay in adopting a UNSC resolution calling for a global ceasefire amid the contagion. Deforestation in Brazil's Amazon rainforest has risen by 64% in the month of April in comparison with the same month last year. Brazil's National Institute for Space Research said in the first 4 months of 2020, deforestation was up by 55% from a year ago. More in this report.
The Amazon deforestation reached an 11-year high last year and continues to climb in 2020. Scientists say the world's largest tropical rainforest remains vital to curb global warming. Activists say increasing commercial activity has emboldened illegal loggers, miners, and ranchers.
In the last deforestation bulletin for April 2020, we noted a considerable increase in deforestation in the Amazon. When we consider the 10-year history of our data, we determined that April has the highest rate of forest loss in the region. It is an area of 529 square kilometers, the equivalent of the city of Porto Alegre.
The activists say the commercial activity can also spread contagious diseases into natives.
Deforestation also carries a huge risk of COVID-19 infection. You need people to deforest, and there is much invasion of indigenous lands, and these people can carry COVID-19 to the regions, putting local and indigenous populations at risk.
Meanwhile, British supermarkets have warned Brazil of boycotting its products over a bill that could enable faster destruction of the rainforest. More than 40 companies signed an open letter urging Brazil's national legislature to reject the proposed bill backed by President Jair Bolsonaro.
Venezuela's central bank has filed a legal claim to force the Bank of England to hand over gold worth $1 billion. The document submitted in a London commercial court seeks an order requiring the Bank of England to comply with the claim. The claim says once transferred to the UN Development Program, the funds would be used to aid Venezuela's pandemic emergency. This follows Caracas's request to the Bank of England in April to sell part of its gold reserves and send the proceeds to the UN. Since 2018, the Bank of England has delayed the transfer of 31,000 kilograms of Venezuelan gold, citing the illegitimacy of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. The Maduro administration has been selling off the country's gold reserves to raise funds amid crippling U.S. sanctions. The U.S.-based telecom giant AT&T is shutting down its DirecTV subscription access to Venezuela, citing U.S. sanctions. In a statement, the company said it was becoming impossible for DirecTV units to comply with the legal requirements of both countries. U.S. sanctions prohibit companies from contracting with Caracas, while Venezuelan laws require subscription services to carry government channels. For years, DirecTV has provided Venezuelans with access to foreign channels. Experts say the sudden termination of services will significantly affect half of the Venezuelan population.
The cessation of DirecTV operations leaves 2 million homes without a television service from today, plus 600 employees out of work. 23 years of history that goes out in a second. Unfortunately, this affects half of the Venezuelan population in a significant way, mainly users of this service who live in poorer areas that had DirecTV. Although it is an expensive service, in Venezuela it has always been a cheap service. The cost of a DirecTV service is around $1 per month or maybe less.
European stock markets have slid into negative territory. Investors are closely following the development over potential COVID-19 vaccine earlier announced by U.S. biotechnology company Moderna. The CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 0.5% higher. London's FTSE 100 is trading marginally lower, while Frankfurt's DAX is trading flat. In Asia, the Nikkei 225 closed nearly 1% higher, while Seoul's Kospi gained nearly 0.5%. The Shanghai Composite lost over 0.5%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng remained flat. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has gained over 0.5%. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus.News. Thanks for watching.